Well, good morning and welcome to another session of the Council. I am absolutely honored to have a gentleman who has seen Indian sport and Indian football over the past few decades. An illustrious career, Mr. Novy Kapadia, a absolute titan in the world of Indian football. Welcome to the show and thank you for coming on. I'd like to start this off with, getting you to tell us, giving us a brief window into your career thus far.
Well, I've been with Indian football more than a few decades. I'm betraying my age. It's been 5 decades, 50 years nearly. Of course, I started as a player playing in the local leagues, B division, A division. I played for about 20 odd years in the Delhi League, then moved on to coaching. I coached the Delhi sub-junior team, Delhi University, my own club team. I was a club owner, also a team which participated in the local league in Delhi. Then drifted into sports journalism and finally, from which I'm most well known, commentary and as an expert on television. So it's been a very long journey, but what I'd like to first clarify is that unlike many of the younger generation who come into football because of international football, my generation and me in particular, for us the love was Indian football. Honestly, in the 60s, I couldn't have named more than 10 or maybe a dozen international players. Pele, obviously, a few Brazilians. England, when they won the World Cup, we knew Bobby Moore, Bobby Charlton, and a few. But I mean, we talked about Indian football. Our heroes were Chunni Goswami, P.K. Banerjee, Jarnail Singh, Yusuf Khan. They were the people we adored, admired, walked with them, talked with them. And I mean, for me, Mohun Bagan was the best team then. Mohun Bagan was Barcelona for me. What Barcelona is now. Exactly. I mean, I ran away from a family funeral to watch Mohun Bagan play. Everything came secondary to watch those clubs. There used to be those great tournaments in Delhi, DCM football tournament and the Durand football tournament, which used to go on for over 1 month. Yes. And Mohun Bagan had this tradition, slightly old-fashioned ideas that we don't take part in a tournament which has a commercial venture like the DCM, which was a private sector company. So they used to only come in the Durand. So we used to be desperate to see them because, I mean, Chunni Goswami and all. You see, again, I'd like to clarify, I say we were lucky that 63, 64, 65, when we were seeing these clubs and the top Indian players, we were seeing the best in Asia. India was Asian Games gold medalist in 62, beating both Japan and South Korea. 64, we were AFC Asian Cup runners-up, narrowly lost to Israel. So you were seeing the best players in Asia. So, to watch Chunni Goswami, and then remember there's no television. So to watch Chunni Goswami on the ground was something you'd give up everything for. I mean, and Durand was somehow always in the winter months. Fortunately, school was the winter holidays. Delhi used to be bitingly cold then. So there was no Christmas party, no New Year's party. It was all football and Mohun Bagan.
Right. It's interesting you mention or you bring up Delhi. Of course, that's because where you grew. You were very kind and generous with your time for a story that we did on Nation of Sport on Delhi's lost football history, which Priyansh did. So I urge our readers to definitely check that story out. In a way, I kind of relate to you with your sentiment with how Indian football was everything for you, and then you graduated in international football. That's what I feel similarly with the game that I play and I'm very close to, which is basketball. But I want to pick up on your point where you mentioned that it's only very recently that there's this obsession with international football, and rightly so, with the arrival of television in the arrival of television, there's this gradual shift towards becoming fans of international football. But I see that shift also happening with the administration of Indian football and particularly in the field of coaching. We've historically had Indian coaches both on an international level as well as at a domestic level. But there's now been this shift towards finding foreign coaches. Two questions to you in that. One is, when did that shift happen? And two, what do you think are some of the reasons for that shift?
Well, this shift really in a large manner has happened with the start of the ISL, where it's practically become mandatory, whether a convention or a rule, that each franchise has to have a foreign coach. I mean, at the most, an Indian can be an assistant, So that is where it's really happened in a big way. Of course, earlier also clubs did take foreign coaches, but at the national team level, the first foreign coach we had was Harry Wright, way back just after the great S.A. Rahim died, who still had the maximum percentage of successes for Indian football, over 60%. So when Rahim died, Harry Wright had come over to what is now the National Institute of Sports as a instructor, as a trainer, and he was asked to take over the national team. So with the national team, it started then. In fact, it was like the end of an era, because Rahim understood his players psychologically, where to play whom. Harry Wright was different, old school, believed in physical fitness, running around the ground. The lot of the Indian players then were much more skillful. They didn't adapt to that training. Hamid told me the story, the AFC, after the AFC Asian Cup, they went for a pre-Olympic qualifier to Iran, to Tehran. And he said on the morning of the match, he asked us to go in the ground and warm up and run around. And he says we were flabbergasted because we'd never done something like that. Our whole approach was different. The morning of the match, you relaxed, concentrated, woke up late. So it just didn't gel. He stayed separately from the players. Rahim always used to stay with the players. He gave them their space, but kept a tight watch on them. So, the team deteriorated after that. And then for some years, we didn't have anybody. We had Dietmar FIFA, who came as a technical director from East Germany for the 1982 Asian Games. P.K. Banerjee was the national coach then. They took his ideas, but Indians were in charge. For me, one of the greatest foreign coaches to have come to India was Milovan Siric, of former erstwhile Yugoslavia, who'd coach Red Star Belgrade, who'd coach the top clubs of India. Now, letting you on to something personal, Milovan Siric, coming from that East European background, in the beginning struggled to understand India. We had also at the same time had Bob Bootland, who'd come over from England to coach club teams. Before Milovan joined, Bootland briefly coached the national team. The IFF made a big mess of it. At one time, they had both of them as coaches. This is the typical compromise. Right. And it was a shortcut to disaster. Milovan was the taciturn, reserved, man of few words. Bootland was excited. He was the Jurgen Klopp. Jumping about on the sidelines. And it became so impossible that the players have told me this, that at one stage in an international match, Milovan has got so irritated, he's pulled him by his hair and said, sit down. The relationships broke. Then they gave him a second team. But Milovan Siric, I remember sitting in a hotel room in Delhi. He especially called me for breakfast. And, that is what I felt our problem when we get foreign coaches is that we never tell them the exact situation in India. You're not going to get dozens of practice grounds. There is a whole structure which exists in Indian football. See, India is not like some of the African countries where football practically didn't exist and you could build it from scratch. It's like when Milovan came over, there were all these domestic tournaments, the players had loyalties to their clubs. We had a long session over breakfast, I think from 10 to noon, where I tried gently telling him what, he just couldn't understand why, practice grounds were not available, and if there was an Independence Day, then everything had to come to a standstill. And, they were all... See, there was a small instance, one of these festival days. They used to practice at the Nehru Stadium. It was a holiday. So our bureaucratic structure, even the chowkidar, the storekeeper was on a holiday. So when the Indian team went to practice, there were no nets. You see, now Milovan, coming from a professional European environment, had never even in his worst nightmare had such a situation.
Right.
But it was just the players had told him, it was I can't remember, a big national holiday. Right. You can't practice that day. But he'd taken them. Then finally, one or two of the Delhi football officials were there, and Mr. O.P. Malhotra, who was sports teacher of PGDAV College, which is close by, he very sportingly went on his scooter or asked somebody to drive him, and he brought the nets from his college and put them up on the ground. So you see, these have been problems. But all said and done, Milovan was outstanding because he brought unity into the team. He was the one who brought in this idea of rotating captains, which Stephen Constantine has done now. But above all, Milovan should historically be remembered for removing the national team from barracks to five-star hotels. He insisted that if you want a top-class national team, they've got to get comfort and good facilities, bringing in things like physios,
Right.
Giving the players the respect they had. For that, Milovan will always be remembered. For also bringing, you see, India being as it is, earlier, yes, Rahim had certain unity. Of course, that was a generation just after independence. So there was that great national feeling. But we've been traditionally divided, Bengal, Punjab, South.
Right.
Milovan fostered great team spirit. He wanted players with pace, lesser known players got a chance. So I think Milovan did a fantastic job because the type of teams we played with against the Nehru Cup, in the recent past, that was some outstanding. We played Argentina, who had about 5 players who then went on to win the 1986 World Cup.
Right.
Like Buruchaga, Neri Pompido, and we matched them.
Right.
We played Hungary, Poland. They were top class teams. So Milovan was near golden era. He got in lots of players. He left after 3 years. He was an old man. And then we didn't have coaches for some time. Then we got 2 East Europeans, Joseph Gelly from Hungary, who had great pedigree. He was a member of the 1966 World Cup Hungary team, which lost in the quarterfinals, goalkeeper. And after that, Jiří Pesek of Czech Republic, now former Czechoslovakia. But both were, of the East European background. A lot of emphasis on teamwork. Couldn't really understand why in India automatically players from the same state will want to stay in the same room, why they don't mix and talk. Again, we has to try and talk with them that, India is a land of, it's as big as Europe. It's a land of different countries and cultures. And so these things, food habits were different.
Yes.
And you see, these were all small things. Right. But with Gelly and Pesek, in a way, they weren't assertive enough. We went back to staying in Nehru Stadium, residential complex and all, which was all right. Milovan, even in practice sessions, wanted the team to be in hotels and have good food, right, etc. Right. What did happen during that time was that Indian coaches were attached to these great coaches, foreign coaches, which was a good step. For instance, Sukhvinder Singh, who became a good national coach, who brought a revolution in Punjab football. He learnt everything from Milovan. Right. He was an assistant. He later on was with Joseph Gelly. Till Samir Thapar, his owner, called him back and said, boss, I'm employing you, now do something for my team. Sukhvinder has admitted he's learnt a lot of modern football by being with these people. The advantage, later Arun Ghosh was with Pesek, the late Derek D'Souza of Bombay, right, Mafatlal Mills, and yes, he was with them. So it was, I thought, sensible. The Indian coaches were learning, plus they were experienced. There has to be a conversation. They could converse, talk to, the foreign coach, right, make him understand India. Now, immediately after that, we got Rustam Akramov from Uzbekistan. Now, we made the biggest blunder. The Indian team in those days, it will come as a surprise to many younger people, was selected on the basis of the Santosh Trophy, the National Football Championship. That was India's ultimate tournament. Yes. Whether the Olympics, Asian Games, pre-Olympics, you watch that. Now, that is where I say it's very important to have Indian assistance. In one of those Santosh Trophies, I M Vijayan, who was arguably India's most talented player of the last 20, 30 years, did not have a good Santosh Trophy. Chennai, I think 1995. I think he was getting married or whatever personal problems were there. he didn't play too well. Rustam Akramov dropped him from the team, which India was going for a SAF championship to Sri Lanka, which we should have walked away with. Baichung Bhutia made his debut there. Now these were errors. That's why I'm saying these are the type of mistakes we've continuously made. He's watched one tournament. There was nobody with him to tell him, "Yaar, this chap is phenomenal.
Right.
He's far above any Indian football
It's just
player."
it's a blip in his ability and his talent.
Yeah, for these 2-3 matches that he played.
Right.
India lost that final to Sri Lanka and came back. But then Shabir Ali joined, India's captain when we won the 1974 Asian Youth Championship. So that's what I said, the successives mostly have come with Indian coaches. When Shabir Ali's team became Asian Youth Champions, the late Salam and Arun Ghosh were coaches. Right. Our Asian Games gold medals were both won when Rahim was a coach. Right. Of course, Harry Wright inherited that team, got them as runners-up in 64 Asian Cup. But Indian coaches have done splendidly. Right. So Shabir Ali, when he joined as a technical director, he slowly advised Rustam Akramov that we can't leave out Vijayan. To credit, he did come back. Right. So we had Rustam Akramov for some time. Then early 21st century was Stephen Constantine's first stint as national coach, where I thought he again had a lot of teething problems. He was younger. You see, it's a problem all over the world. When England got in, Sven-Goran Eriksson and Capello, there used to be criticism in all the papers. Aren't there enough English players, English coaches? Right. So you have to accept that. So there would be regular criticism, and Stephen Constantine took that very personally. He did have reasonable success, but then he went, and I think the best foreign coach we've had was Bob Houghton, who came in 2006, just after the 2006 World Cup. Very pragmatic, very seasoned professional coach. The players loved him. He did all the things Milovan did, ensured that they had excellent facilities. Above all, what he did was make AIFF realize two very important things, that there has to be a continuity. Right. Till Bob Houghton, the senior team was coached by somebody, the junior team by somebody else. They played in different styles of play. There was no automatic progression. Houghton did that. He talked about youth development. He helped India find Colin Toll Island, who developed youth teams. Yes. The youth academies started. This is all due to Bob Houghton. So Bob Houghton brought in professionalism into Indian football. The players loved him for that. Second thing he did was more friendly matches. India played too few matches. Yes. Third most important thing, as I said, he was the most pragmatic person you could get. 3 tournaments in a row we won: 2007 Nehru Cup, 2009 Nehru Cup, and in between 2008, where was this AFC Challenge Cup, which was being held in Hyderabad. I was doing commentary there. Gachibowli Stadium, it poured in Hyderabad, the monsoon, so the final was shifted to Delhi. Now, Houghton loved Ambedkar Stadium, Delhi, because it had the feel of a small English football ground. No athletics track, the crowd is just sitting near the players. Yes. Small stadium, maximum 20,000. They are baying, cheering vociferously. You unnerve the opposition. Anyway, you're not playing seasoned opposition. In fact, both the Nehru Cups we won against Syria, which was arguably a much better team than us, we unnerved them. So Houghton was very pragmatic. Right. That is the type of foreign coach we need. He didn't bother about parking space and Nehru Stadium being elegant and big. He wanted this committed 18,000 fans, who cheered and got India going. Houghton, second important thing for me was, since 2009 onwards, this is when satellite TVs come to India, the young generation has got enamored by tiki-taka and Barcelona and Messi and Xavi and Iniesta. And everybody thought that, it was a great football team. And it seemed, why can't we play like that? They are not giants. Houghton very practically realized that India can't play like that. So, see what he did, small things. Two tall central defenders. He shifted Gormangi Singh from being a midfielder with the Indian junior team to a stopper back. He would searched for another tall central defender. He shifted Mahesh Gowli to right wing back. First Gowli and Gormangi were partners. Deepak Mondal was right back. Then Gowli went when he got Anwar Ali. So, he did these things properly. He got in Subroto Pal, agile and taller goalkeeper. They played to the flanks, got in the crosses early. Baichung had Sunil Chhetri as a partner. Either they played quick 1-2s and took a shot, or passed back for an on-rushing midfielder. That's how NP Pradeep scored the winning goal against Syria. So Houghton was a pragmatic style which, wasn't beautiful football but was effective football. His misfortune was another great thing he did. Before the 2011 AFC Asian Cup, which was in January in Qatar, similar like what's happening now. For 2010, after the transfer season, this is the first time it's happened in Indian football, he got all the 25 or 30 probables on a national contract. They didn't go to the clubs. Because what Houghton did was the facilities he created. It was for the first time. You see, in India has always had, like many countries in the world, club versus country conflict.
Yes.
And in the earlier generation, the clubs looked after the players much better. They got money. We know the 82 games, the Asian game, there was a walkout. Now players were keener to play for the national team because the medical facilities were much better, the food, even allowances. So Houghton created a national team culture. And as I said, a success breeds success. See, we didn't have to say fan banna padega. Even in a place like Delhi, there were 18,000 people in every match India played. The national newspapers gave it front page coverage or prominent on the sports page because the Indian football team was buzzing. Houghton was a practical man. He allowed the players to give interviews, not excessively, but there were time for interviews. And, we had packed stadiums. We didn't have to make any appeals.
Right.
So Houghton was a revelation. He got these players on a central contract. They played dozens of practice matches. Sadly got buried a little because India hosted the 2010 Commonwealth Games. Right. So our media attention was all there. Right. Unfortunately, 2011, it was the group of death. We were in the same group as South Korea, Australia and Bahrain, who were outstanding teams. South Korea, Australia just played the 2010 South Africa World Cup. Australia had players like Harry Kewell and, Tim Cahill, and they were a class apart. Right. So we lost all the matches. Even Bahrain had nearly reached the World Cup. I thought needlessly, most of the players support me. They've also echoed that. Houghton was removed. New look All India Football Federation wanted people who could make India play possession football. And he went a very disenchanted and frustrated man. And from what one has heard, he's sort of told friends that, there's no point going back to India. Houghton's contract should have been extended because he had a long-term vision. Right. For Indian football. Right. He was giving advice on tournaments also of how to, increase the number of teams and then the I-League, have a knockout tournament. He was a very practical man. Right. Then we had Wim Kovermans, great pedigree, European Championship winner with Netherlands 1988, tall. But you see, it was again, Kovermans wanted India to play like Ajax Amsterdam, possession football, and good. He looked after the team very well, but ultimately they were found wanting. And 2014 Asian Games at Incheon was an ultimate disaster. We lost both matches without scoring a goal. In fact, that's what prevented India from going for the 2018 Asian Games, because the IOA looked at it that we are not good enough. Right. Kovermans had to go also. And that whole structure sadly broke down. Rob Barn, Colin Toll. Till then, we then reintroduced Stephen Constantine. His second stint was much better, with focus on intensive physical fitness and, improving the fitness of the players. And also, I think, doing a good job in insisting that the national team play on all FIFA friendly days. Even if it was against Bangladesh and Nepal. Right. You play matches. We used to ignore that. So this is in about a nutshell the foreign coaches we've had. As I said, there have been many good foreign coaches in clubs also. But it's really from 2014 onwards where we had this boom in the ISL. And then the I-League club said, if they can do it, why not us? So at present, it's a bit theatre of the absurd. Right. Because the people, Indian coaches who do A license and pro license, they are unemployed. Like Santosh Kashyap of Bombay. He said he spent lakhs from his own money to go to Tokyo to do what he said is his PhD in football education. Now he sits twiddling his thumbs. You see, so we've got no balance. Right. You're not developing Indian coaches.
Absolutely. And I feel that is one of the challenges, which is the ISL claims to be developing or helping the development of Indian football. And in a lot of ways it has, right? Whether it's bringing professionalism at multiple levels, not just at the coaching or the playing level, but even at the administrative and even the, say, for example, medical and rehab level. They have done. There is absolutely, without a doubt, that there's a lot of positive there. But one of the challenges I felt, or one of the shortcomings I felt, was if their intention was to develop Indian football, and they've done that with Indian players, where they've put Indian players next to foreign players and allowed them to grow, find their stride. Why not do the same thing with, for example, Indian coaches? I mean, you've had Indian assistant coaches now for 6 seasons. If there was a consistent program or a concerted program towards finding an Indian coach who could shadow a foreign coach and then maybe take on a team of his own one day. So it brings me to my next question, which is, the ISL doesn't have a single Indian head coach. The I-League has just 6 out of 5 clubs. What do you feel is the reason Indian clubs now go for foreign coaches, other than the fact that it's mandated, right? I mean, in the case of the ISL, it's mandated, but not so much in the I-League. And what do you feel are, say, for example, you've given a long example of Bob Houghton, but could you give us 2 examples of things that foreign coaches do differently from Indian coaches that is beneficial to Indian football?
Well, beneficial from feedback from the players is definitely match day fitness, how to recover after a match. These are some of the things foreign coaches have done very well. Right. Certain, running off the ball, movements. These are certain things, yes, foreign coaches have done extremely well. Right. But it's also the other, important thing I think would be that foreign coaches, again, the biggest example is Sunil Chhetri, who's won the Padma Shri. I mean, his career took off when Ashley came under Ashley Westwood with Bengaluru FC in 2013. Ashley himself told me this. He said, Chhetri, he saw him, took him aside and said, you've got talent, you've got everything, but you don't have the right fitness. And you're getting on in age. So he changed his diet, no sugar, regimented diet, proper sleep. See, these are small things.
Yeah. I've had the opportunity of working with Sunil Chhetri at Mumbai City FC. So yeah. I've seen, and what you say is absolutely on this.
I mean, Sunil Chhetri is amazing now. Right. I mean, who's blossomed at 34, when people are petering off. Right. I mean, he's at the best of his form.
It's his peak. You normally hit your peak in your late 20s, early 30s, but he's...
Yeah. So there, Ashley Westwood, proper sleep, proper rest, the right food to eat. What the Indian team showed in the AFC Asian Cup also. There's greater levels of fitness, awareness of diet, which wasn't there before. Right. So there, definitely it's a major advantage. And also foreign coaches manage to get their way to making sure that players do get all this. I mean, Chhetri, of course, is a remarkable example. I mean, we worked together in the World Cup as experts, he wouldn't have an ounce of sweet. Very conscious of his diet, would order special food, from the hotel, not have spicy food. So all these things has helped. Foreign coaches have been a major success in that. But as I said, also there have been many who don't understand the Indian situation.
Right, and that's the part that what you said earlier kind of now adds up. One of the reasons we expect, the ISL for instance, expects foreign coaches to come maybe just a few weeks before training camp or maybe around training camp for these teams, and then expect to work wonders with these players. Whereas, like you mentioned, Bob Houghton or whoever it is, Milovan, they took their time with the Indian football team. They took their time to understand. And we are a complicated, we are a complex country, not complicated. We are a complex country. We are a complex nation. So it should take time, but it's impossible to work magic in 4 months or 5 months, right? Which brings me to another question. You've seen every coach possible at the national level, at the international level for India. What are, say, 2 qualities that you think the next Team India coach, the next national team coach should have? And not necessarily qualities, but maybe 2 ideas, 2 qualities, just 2 things they need to be cognizant of or have or possess in order to be able to take Indian football further.
I think paramount, most important, you must have an understanding of Indian football. Why Constantine was successful in his second stint, he knew what to expect. I think a very wise thing he did was take on his former players, Abhishek Yadav and Venkatesh, as spotters, assistants. Okay, so they communicated where there were language problems. They could tell him, see that guy in Goa, see that chap in Punjab. So somebody who understands Indian football. This whole debate now is high profile coach. What you're saying is dead right. In India, too many of us believe there's magic in coaches. Bring in Mourinho, bring in Guardiola.
It's ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous. They'll make no difference, just take away a lot of money. We are not going to improve.
And sometimes I feel, sorry for interrupting, but sometimes I feel people just throw these names because everybody has an opportunity to have an opinion now.
Yeah.
No? Because I can tweet, I will say things like, bring Mourinho. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's absolutely, because there's no maybe Guardiola builds a whole team in which he spends tens and 15 millions of dollars.
Exactly.
And then Barcelona, that was a unique. I mean, after all, La Masia has never produced that same group of players again.
A very underrated point. Nobody realizes.
Nobody realizes it because
Barcelona is still so high profile.
Yeah, Barcelona. Barcelona don't play like that themselves anymore.
Exactly.
And whenever Messi retires, they're not going to be as great. I mean, Messi is a genius.
Right.
So, we have to get, when Constantine was being chosen, credit to Baichung Bhutia, who was then in charge of the technical committee, Zico had thrown his hat into the ring. At that time, he was the FC Goa coach. But Zico's demand was $75,000 a month. Well, Zico was the most high-profile person and he'd coached Japan, so he understood Asia. But I think it was wise. It was no point with that level of senior team that we had. Zico couldn't have made that much difference. What's the point of spending so much money? So I think the paramount importance is somebody who's been in India, knows India. So the names which are being, thrown about, Ashley Westwood, who's been very successful with Bengaluru, developed that team from scratch literally. I think his success with the first year was phenomenal. It was practically, besides Sunil Chhetri, unknown players.
Absolutely.
And he got in those 2 Englishmen, John Johnson, Curtis Osano, otherwise totally unknown players.
Right.
Or Alberto Roca, the Spanish coach, also with Bengaluru. These are people who understand the Indian situation, realize what practice grounds means, realize that at Diwali you can't play. People who understand these things.
They understand the fabric of our nation.
Foreign coach who comes, it takes 6 months first to understand who's who. We must realize our players, it's not like playing in the Premiership or Bundesliga. Nobody abroad is watching us. So nobody knows about Indian players. We have to forget over all these fantasies that we exist in. Right. So it takes 6 months to a year to understand Indian players. That's why I think Constantine's best thing was getting these 2 Indians. You know, his former players who he could trust.
As advisors at the end of the
And
day,
people who he got on with.
Right.
And took their advice. So I would say get a person who knows the Indian situation, all this. You see, it's no, everybody will come and say have a unified league. Yes, we should, but it's not so easy because India is a complex country. So it's not going to happen overnight because some foreign coach is saying it. Constantine in the beginning used to say, why can't we have non-resident Indians? Till Praful Patel asked him to clamp down.
Yes.
That's
I remember that conversation.
It's a Supreme Court ruling, it's a Government of India decision. If it's being done in Rwanda or Angola or something, which anyway are, you know, the size of Gurgaon, you know, India is too complex. We have complex borders, there are so many problems.
Yes.
You can't change rules for football. A lot of people don't realize that. So that's why I feel that what we need is a person, there are so many foreign coaches, choose sensibly, somebody within a budget but who understands India, who knows this generation of players and who can, you know, take them step by step forward and also have reasonable ambition. See, our next ambition should be to qualify for AFC Asian Cup 2023. Forget about the Qatar World Cup, there is absolutely no chance.
Yes.
So get a foreign coach for that. We are hearing that for the under 23 qualifiers which are in for the Olympics, which is in March, they may be veering towards an Indian coach again. Derek Pereira is a front runner, which is good. He served an apprenticeship. He's a very good club coach. He knows junior players. So because I think the time is too short, the biggest mistake would be what we did with the under 17 World Cup team. We destroyed that team. You had Nikolai Adams, who was then considered and is on reputation one of the best coaches for age group football. So we chose very well. But as usual, because we are overawed 200 years of British rule, every fair-skinned person who comes here has major advantages. Right. You know, everybody thinks they're a fountain of knowledge and, you know, nobody will lies to speak to them. Right. Now, Nicola Adams is brilliant, but he could have been told about, as you said, India's complexities. Right. People from different regions, certain things. Now, he was hard as nails. He demanded, he was German, meticulous, 9 o'clock meant 1 minute before 9. Correct. You know, he had his own rules. You had to follow those rules. Right. He came with that baggage. He was known to be a disciplinarian. He was known to be an angry man who shouted at people. Yeah. Now, the mistake AIFF made was having nincompoops with him. The Indian officials were there for foreign trips.
Like it's in most cases, unfortunately.
Like it happens in most places.
Right.
They are there to bring the water bottles, clean the bench and say, yes sir, yes sir. Right. So we heard that he abused certain players and all, which I'm sure not, but in anger. I mean, these are kids. All of us when we were young, your sports teacher or coach did shout at you and say things like that. Right.
But also, I mean, to add to your point, sorry for interrupting there, but like you mentioned, it was his reputation. So what did they think was going to happen? Was he going to pander down to these 17-year-olds? No.
That is the thing.
He was going to be himself.
He was going to be himself. He's German. He's, you know, he's that Teutonic thoroughness. Yeah. So you do a mistake 10 times, he's going to say you're an idiot. Right. You have to accept that. Yeah. And the language is different.
It's very different, yes.
It's very different. Yes. He's also a German speaking English.
Right, right.
No, he was a remarkable man. His father died when we were playing, I think, the AFC under 16 or under 17 in Goa. He didn't go back. See, people now criticize him. Right. Which coach would have done that? He didn't go back for his own father's funeral. Now, the players, it's no point, you know, bringing it up again. I know the inside story. The players were instigated by the Indian officials who were there because he was getting more annoyed with the officials who were partying, who were enjoying all the foreign trips and, you know, and he was wanting to throw them out. Right. So they instigated, and which were predominantly Northeast players, so it was easy to get them as a group. And in India, the easiest thing is to talk about, you know, which these days is very fashionable, about, you know, racism and
I mean, unwarranted claims, but
Unwarranted
it's like
claims are made.
you throw it there. The moment you
just
put it
throw
out there,
Yeah.
because when you put out a story, unfortunately, we've reached a stage where now when you put out a story, whether it's true or not, it's the first story out. So people assume this is the marker now.
Yeah.
You have to move this marker.
Yeah.
So
And in what the law says, you are innocent till proved guilty. Here is you're guilty till you
you're
prove
proven
yourself
innocent. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
6 months before a World Cup, for a novice team like ours, how can you change a coach? He had his own views, his own way of playing. Okay, they got in that Santos, who was a father figure type, not in Santos the Portuguese, who was more a father figure type of coach.
Right.
I mean, it was in disarray. And Norton stayed with them for a year or so and then moved on. So there's no vision. So that's why I said, let's not make the same mistake. Nicola Adams came, they should have sat down with him, said, we've never done all this before. The first time we are choosing junior players. They are traveling abroad for the first time. They are not German or Dutch children who go abroad every 2 months to play friendly matches. They are going to make mistakes, be gentle with them, whatever.
Right.
There should have been somebody discussing things with him.
Right. We've spoken about how different foreign coaches have had different forms of influence on the Indian game, and now, I mean, the reality is that unlike say, for example, 10-15 years ago, even Indian coaches can constantly keep updating themselves because of the accessibility, whether it's internet, whether it's TV, whether it's television, whether it's satellite television. I'm going to ask you a fairly straightforward question. Do you think it's time for Team India to have an Indian coach again, and somebody who will be in there for the long run?
I think it's time, but I know the way the federation thinks and the way the whole, I mean, the pressure groups, the players themselves, I think they'll opt for a foreign coach. So I think it's pointless even thinking, because I personally do feel, and I think it's sensible if they take Derek Pereira with the under-23 team, because he'll be able to groom that team. And they should be, yes, Indian coaches have to update themselves. You have to be able to, but the important thing is many of the Indian coaches say that there is an apartheid in treatment. When we ask for 5-star hotel facilities, it's never given. Then you said, कि भाई तुमने तो घर में, you drank tap water, why do you want bottled water?
You traveled in trains.
You traveled in trains, why you, yes.
Yeah.
You see, so there is especially, we've only had white-skinned foreign coaches.
Right.
So if somebody like them says everything, everybody says yes, sir.
Assumes. And again, like I said, this is where I relate to you, because that's the same feeling we have with basketball, for example, in this country. Nobody cares whether a brown skin, and I'm being very careful about my words here, but if he happens to be he's a black skin or white skin, means he is the basketball god. Whereas an Indian player who's actually done something and could be even better, more talented than them, is actually nobody. So yeah, sorry, please carry on.
You see, I think why you can't have an Indian coach now is because in the last 4 or 5 years, none of them have been in charge of high profile teams. The last was Sanjoy Sen with Mohun Bagan, and he won the I-League and the Federation Cup, but then broke his arm, and he's also now an assistant with ATK, doing almost nothing. Maybe taking the juniors for a run around the ground or something. So who was there? I mean, Derek Pereira is the best possible. As I said, Santosh Kashyap is unemployed for 2 years. Khalid Jamil has just got back with Mohun Bagan.
Right.
He was after winning with Aizol. So where are the Indian coaches? So this is creating a problem.
Right.
It's a catch-22 situation. You're not giving them. There's nobody who's active. It's becoming, in a way, something similar to what was in England, where all the top Premier League clubs had foreign coaches. You struggle to find an English coach. Right. With India, it's worse. Right. So it's going to be very difficult. But what I know of the feelings of the players and all, I think, at least at present, it's going to be, it's going to be a foreign coach. And you see, ultimately, Indian football at present is at crossroads. There are 2 leagues, there are multiple centers of authority. So until all this gets consolidated, over here, everybody first thinks of marketing. So if you have a foreign coach and you can chant Manchester United and this and that he trained there, it becomes big. Right. Sponsors get attracted and all. And I think that is the trend. But I do hope, at least whoever comes, one is, as I said, I hope it's somebody who knows India, right. So he has an idea. Right. And he has some sensible Indian coaches with him, right. Which, as I've given examples in the past, Milovan had, and what's his name, even Rustam Akramov and all. So, you the senior Indian players who have nothing at stake and who can give some advice, have a look at him, have a look at somebody.
Right. Or like you said, Stephen Constantine,
he trusted. Two players he trusted. He didn't take Bhaichung Bhutia because even then they didn't get on very well. Sure. He took two so-called lesser known players, but chaps he trusted. Right. And who had the time to go all over the country and spot players.
And those were chaps who had more than anything else, they also had the trust of the fraternity in terms of the players, right? They may not have been big names in terms of marketability, but Abhishek Yadav, for instance, I had the opportunity of working closely with him at Mumbai City FC. A lot of people have difference of opinion with him, but the truth is that he's somebody who has the best interest of football at his heart, Indian football at his heart.
Very hardworking.
So I kind of want to wrap this up, and thank you so much for your time, but I just want to wrap this up with moving forward, you've seen now Indian football for 50 years, moving forward, what are the two things Indian football needs to do in order to, I just don't want to say continue its linear development, because we're getting some sort of linear development. If you had the choice, what are two things you think you would suggest happen in Indian football that would cause an uptick in Indian football? Like the growth, instead of going, say, 10% every year, suddenly 1 year we increase by 50-60%. What is like one or two things that we could do?
Well, the first important thing which we've not done for years, in fact is declined, is we are not spreading the game all over the country. The football, the years I played, it was played in many more states in India than what it is now. We are just forgetting that. After all, 8 to 10 franchisees can't represent the whole of India. You're just one team from one state. Right. India is much larger than that. After all, in the whole of North India, where you have tall, physically stronger people, genetically, there's no football. There's one Real Kashmir which has just come up, and there's Minerva. In Punjab, which is again Ranjit Bajaj's own passion. Right. Exactly. If it may decline in 5-10 years as he grows up in life and other problems come up, that will come to an end. There's Delhi Dynamos, which has no following in Delhi at all. Absolutely. Nobody in Delhi can name 3 players in that team, besides the family who owns it.
It's astonishing. Their stadium, the emptiness of their stadium, first of all, they play in that stadium which has like 65,000 capacity. They cut it down to 35,000 and you still have only a few thousand people. So it's ridiculous. It's almost like when I'm in Delhi and I take some of my Delhi friends to watch a Delhi game, I'm almost embarrassed to say that this is a growing sport in the country.
And then 90% have come on passes. If there were tickets, it would be totally empty.
Exactly, and completely agree with you. Like I know some of the people who work at the Delhi Dynamos team right now, and I think they are trying. I feel bad for them because it's a massive task. Like they are hitting their head against the wall. And this wall's not budging, not breaking. So yeah, exactly. We are in the north. There's no representation in football. There's no discernible residential representation in football.
So you have to revive football in the states. I personally feel, I know it's not going to happen. All India Football Federation should have a rule that if you don't conduct a state league, you don't get to vote. All our association officials interested are in voting and foreign trips. So make sure they conduct local leagues. From thousands, talent will appear. When you have quantity, quality comes. Right. We have very little quantity. So that is one major step which I don't see happening. Right. What happens is, 14 clubs have closed down since 2011. We keep talking about growth and ISL and all, but 14 clubs have closed down, including FC Pune, who was touted as the most professional team in India. In 3 years, they are dead and gone. How many teams have closed down? Nobody has ever talked to them. JCT, Mahindra United, They were legendary teams. Somebody should have talked to them. The ups and downs happen. Manchester City have been relegated, you know. So the teams start, some young entrepreneur who's modeled himself on Manchester United will start a team in Madhya Pradesh and, you know, think overnight we'll make money. When you realize you make losses in the first year, the team shuts down. So where
for several years, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So as I said, the team, if we look at the league table of the I-League in 2011, only Mohun Bagan and East Bengal are left. Yeah. There's nobody else there. Churchill Brothers now. Yeah, so where are we going? There's no direction. There has to be a direction in the thing. Second important thing for me is, which I think only Rahim did, to a certain extent PK Banerjee when he was national coach, or Bob Houghton, who was a very pragmatic man. There's to be a way India plays. Here our national team changes according to the national coach. Wim Kovermans wanted us to play like Ajax, you know, quick possession football, technically sound. Constantine has changed that, tight defense, quick on the counter attack, you know, relay the ball fast. I mean, there's no passer of the ball in midfield. Yeah. Tall defenders, very British way, which is also fine. So, you know, Rahim had a view that India can play like this. Rahim was been the greatest thinker in Indian football. He realized that genetically you can't match. So you have to, you know, use skills, quick interchange of positions. He was the first one to have a withdrawn forward, to play with 4 forwards, which was revolutionary in his time. In the 56 exactly. Melbourne Olympics.
Now it's like a regular.
Now it's fashionable.
Fashionable, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, with Messi's false number 9 and all, but he had that in 1956 without calling all these fancy names. It was just a withdrawn forward.
And like you said, no access to international football the way you have right now.
No. He studied books and saw the great Hungarian team who did it first, Hiddakuti, and he made India do it. Now see how practically was this example. Many people don't understand. The 56 Melbourne Olympics team, Neville D'Souza was the great centre forward. See, you know, this is where I said that Rahim understood the psychology. Neville D'Souza, he knew, was the fox in the box, the perfect goal getter. Calm, temperament, but could never work hard. So he didn't have the false number 9. He had the false number 8. He made Samarbhadru Banerjee the inside right fall back. See, this is where he is not, as in Hindi we say, Lakir ka Fakir. You know, he is not that rigid. He realized Neville D'Souza, an asset, he scored a hat-trick against Australia. Let's have somebody else falling back. You see, so Rahim was very revolutionary. He moved one of the midfield players in defense. So you've got to have people who are going to think of an Indian way of playing. Right. You know, somehow that has got to evolve. Otherwise, each time Houghton had his own way, which I thought was effective. Houghton was sensible. Based on the talent you have, you play like that. Kovermans tried something new. Constantine has tried something new. Well, at least with Constantine and Houghton, you know, even the junior teams tried playing like that. But now the under-17 team was different. Right. Nicola Adams was making them play in one way. You know, the Portuguese coach wanted them to play in a different way. So it's, you know, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. We are not moving forward. You know, it's just you get excited, foreign coach, this, that. I keep repeating for years, and everybody, all the coaches also say, there's no magic. A coach cannot give you a magic pill. Right. He can guide you. And at a national level, a coach is a tactician and a man manager.
Absolutely.
That is what is needed.
Absolutely.
You know, to understand the players. That's why again, I know it's going to be a foreign coach, that get a foreign coach who at least knows Indian players, who knows what it is and can't expect, you know, an Indian player to run like Pogba and Mbappe. You know, who must understand India better, understand the cultural divisions and the various things. But for Indian football to improve, we have to broad base and we have to revive other tournaments. After all, let us take an ISL team. Great tournament, great exposure. But those who don't play for India, so there are 10 teams, so you play 18 matches. If your team doesn't progress to the knockout round, In the whole year, you play 18 matches. You may not play every match. Like those who were in the reserve, who didn't make it to the Indian team, from 15 December, they were on a holiday.
Yeah.
For 1 month, they had a holiday. The coaches go away. You know, I know some of them told me that we gave a holiday 15, 20 days, Christmas and New Year.
Teams have to cut costs. So as a matter of fact, they were like, okay, don't stay in your hotels anymore. We are not doing any training facilities. Go chill. And it's the worst time to chill because it's holiday time. You're Christmas, New Year, you're tanking up.
So where are the tournaments? Where are the players going to play? You've got to revive the Durand in Delhi, the Rovers Cup in Bombay, the IFA Shield in Calcutta, where's a senior tournament. Get knockout tournaments. The biggest problem now is India doesn't know how to play a knockout tournament because we only have leagues. Right. You don't know what Pranay Halder, there's no relegation. You don't know how to fight on a football field. You know, ultimately, whatever the coaches may say, the teams which are 8th and 9th in the ISL, they'll say we play for pride and prestige, but it's not the same.
But what pride and prestige?
There's no pride and prestige. Nobody knows whether you're 8th or 9th.
Your club is 6 years old. You can't talk about pride and prestige. You don't really care about very few people really care about the city.
Nobody even remembers who's one or who's second or third.
Absolutely. You know, be pragmatic. Like you said, I like the word you use. It's like be pragmatic about what you're there. Sure, you're part of a journey. You're part of a system to help build Indian football. But to say we are playing for pride, I mean, that sounds ridiculous to me. I think people who say that, they are foolish.
See, ISL should have had graded prize money. If you're 8th, you get 10 lakhs more, whatever. Right. You know, then there's something to fight for. The Premiership, what it does is you're fighting for Europe. If not the Champions League, then the Europa League. Otherwise, you're trying to avoid relegation. So, you know, each position matters. Here, it doesn't matter. You know, so this is, and you have to have knockout tournaments. It's a whole way of playing knockout tournaments is different from a league. Right. You know. Other final important thing is there are too many ego problems in Indian football. ISL owners, I-League owners should all be made to sit down. The intention is the same, to improve Indian football. You know, the ISL owners have come, they are obviously the Johnny come lately. Okay, they have come money bags, they put in money. They marketed much better. I give them full credit for that. The senior legacy clubs, that was a big, fallacy.
Drawback, right.
Yes. They didn't market themselves properly. They've done all that, but you're not a savior. You have to respect people who, as they say, spent money for, even Salgaonkar and Dempo for 50, 60 years. The Calcutta clubs for 100 years. Respect them. Don't scorn at them for their mistakes. They at least kept Indian football going. Let these legacy clubs, I had said in 2014 and all, that let Mohun Bagan East Bengal be part of ISL and maybe even Dempo. After all, they're the most successful team. What they need is business managers. How to market themselves. They don't know how to do that. Right. The legacy that they have, instead of trying to replace them, which was foolish. You see, you have an existing gold mine. Okay, look for more, but don't block the existing gold mine.
But with all due respect to the ISL, Mr. Kapadia, the reality is the team that's on top of the ISL and they finished runners-up last year is an I-League team.
Yeah, it's an I-League team. Yes.
Bengaluru FC built its base and got to a point where it finished, where it did at the, what is the name of the Asian Cup they played?
The AFC Cup.
AFC Cup.
In the I-League.
In the I-League.
Yeah.
So, I of all people should not have anything necessarily negative to say about the ISL because I worked in the ISL, I worked with the club. But the reality is, yes, you are doing something well. But like you said, you don't accost people for their previous mistakes. Yeah. Or by that logic, then nobody should invest in Indian football because Indian football has been making mistakes, right? Yeah. By that ridiculous logic. Yeah. And secondly, the best club in the ISL, they are undefeated till yesterday. They were undefeated. Yeah. This is an I-League team.
It's an I-League team, yeah.
They are not made from the ISL. It's an I-League team.
I-League team, absolutely. So, just sit down, discuss what can be done to take Indian football forward. Obviously, you see, if money is the only criteria, then all these, the Aizol and Gokulam and Neroka,
which are great stories by the
Well,
way.
great
right?
stories. Yeah.
Real Kashmir and Neroka
Real Kashmir.
and Aizawl. They are great stories. If
Yeah.
you're talking about marketing at the end, at the core of it, is all about telling a great story. These are great stories. Find a way to get them involved.
And they are developing a community.
Absolutely.
You know.
Those are people who can say, Aizawl as young a team as it is, can say we are playing for pride because they...
Meso pride,
They are entrenched in the society.
So, if everything is going to be only money, you see, I believe there have been suggestions that let the I-League champions enter ISL automatically without this franchise fee. Of course, the franchise owners resist that we are paying money. They are only there 6 years. So, these are things which can be negotiated.
Exactly. Like you said, bring them all together on the table, have a conversation.
Why make it a Cold War? Until this Cold War subsides, there's just going to be conflict of interests. And, it's all I-League, second division. See what is happening when I've seen it all. 1997, we started the National Football League. That was to be, the golden wand, the savior. Oh, we're having a national league for the first time. And 10 years later, that became the I-League, which we copied Japanese league because Japan had reached the World Cup by then. J-League became I-League. It was change of names, old wine in new bottles. There was no difference at all. It was something that the clubs have to market them. See, it's very easy to say all this. Where are the officials? The marketing people are not going to do jobs free. I may be a passionate Mohun Bagan East Bengal supporter, but I have a family to support. I can't sit there and do things free. We Mohun Bagan East Bengal still sell tickets. You have to go to the counter and buy tickets. In the world which has moved on, they are still in that age, where you go to the counter to buy tickets. There are no online tickets.
But yet they sell out.
So,
there is a lesson in there.
There's a lesson.
You can say they are backward because they are not online, which a lot of people are saying, unfortunately. But the reality is, is that something they should do? Sure.
Yes.
But despite not doing it,
they still have 60,000-70,000 people.
People line up.
Yeah. So, this is why I said there are so many areas where expertise can be shared. And then, you can move on. But instead, there are just these conflicts of interest.
Twitter is just nuts about it. They're just going at each other.
The
fan base.
Just getting on. Just having one unified national league is also not going to work wonders. See, ultimately, my thing is the younger Indian football fan should stop dreaming. I often question them, are you interested in football or do you want to be fans and paint your faces and appear as fans in the World Cup? You see, we all were in football when it wasn't fashionable. I've come back from a World Cup, I've been to 6 World Cups, come back from a World Cup and then gone watched a Delhi League match or written about it or whatever my job was, or even just watched them. So, be patient. Everybody think World Cup, forget the World Cup. Our next target should be next 2 Asian Cups, let's qualify in succession. Let an Anirudh Thapa, Holicharan Nazari, Udanta Singh play 3 successive Asian Cups. You see, Sunil Chhetri is the only player who has played in 2 Asian Cups. Sandhu was there in 2011 but was the 3rd goalkeeper. So this younger generation, Sunil Chhetri won't be there in 2023, let this generation reach, now it's a 24-team tournament, let them on merit qualify for 2023, again in 2027, and then you think of going forward. Just forget all this. See, I was in 2002 doing television programs, I was given a t-shirt, India in 2010. See, our officials have constantly been, we are selling a dream.
That's a moving goalpost.
Goalpost. Yeah. It then became 2018, now it's 2026, now it's 2030. 2030 is now
1
the
month
next
ago,
dream.
Correct.
And we are having even dreams that we are going to stage the World Cup, which is impossible. People don't see the practicality of the thing. One must also realize international football is not ICC. It's not cricket where BCCI arm twists things. They said no DRS, there was no DRS. No country in the world can do that in football because it's a worldwide game and it's very democratic. So just forget all these dreams. You know, even if 8 teams go from Asia when it's expanded to 48 teams, as we can see from the AFC Asian Cup, we are not in the top 16 yet. Yes. So being in the top 8 takes a lot of time to reach. And also the other thing which we should realize is staging the World Cup, there are zonal rotations. If Qatar is getting in 2022, Asia's next turn is not coming till 2038. 2026 we know is USA, Canada and Mexico. 2030 will probably go back to Africa. There will be other African countries. What I've heard, the North African countries want to have a joint World Cup. 2034 will go back to Europe. I mean, Europe is ultimately the power center. You can't have World Cups without having it in Europe. It could and should go to England, Scotland and Wales. So we have to forget about these dreams. Be practical.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Kapadia. It's always a pleasure. I mean, this is our first time we've met, but I've just heard so much, and every expectation that I had was blown out of the water. I hope this is not the last time you come on our show. We'd love to have you more. Definitely people should read your book. If you can quickly tell people your Twitter handle and where they can find you and the book that you've written on, and we'll wrap the show.
Yeah, I'd really love more people. I'm getting the book translated in Bengali and Hindi also, right. And I'd like it in more Indian languages. Barefoot to Boots, Many Lives of Indian Football, right. The legacy of Indian football from 1888 to 2017, great matches, players, tournaments, the whole developments. Great. Twitter handle and Facebook is both Novy Kapadia. So you can contact me on that.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Yeah.